When you picture the very first libraries in America, you probably imagine like this welcoming, cozy room.
Oh, absolutely. A nice fireplace, maybe.
Right. But really, you should be picturing a guarded fortress. Welcome to this deep dive where our mission is to unpack our sources on how the American library completely shapeshifted. We're looking at how they went from these exclusive elite vaults into the vital and frankly embattled pillars of democratic social infrastructure we know today. Because in 1638, John Harvard left 400 books to a new seminary, and that collection was kept strictly for the clergy.
Yeah, knowledge wasn't something to share with you or me. It was a precious commodity to be hoarded. That fortress mentality really defined the colonial era where information was, tightly controlled.
Right. And it didn't really pivot until Benjamin Franklin came along in 1731 with his Chunto Club. To me, looking at the sources, this sounds exactly like an 18th century crowdfunding campaign.
Right.
Crowdfunding campaign. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it was. A bunch of tradesmen, like carpenters and clerks, realized they couldn't afford all the books they wanted individually.
Exactly. So they pool their membership fees to buy a shared collection. They basically democratized access to books by decoupling knowledge from personal wealth.
And that cooperative model laid the groundwork. But the structural revolution, the reason your local town actually has a library building today, well, that comes down to Andrew Carnegie. At the turn of the 20th century, he funded, I think it was 1,687 libraries.
Which is a massive number. But the brilliance wasn't just throwing money at towns, right? It was the catch.
Oh, the catch was everything.
Right.
To get the building, towns had to pledge at least 10% of the initial grant in annual municipal taxes just to support operating expenses.
Wow, so he forced local governments to permanently weave the library into the tax base.
Precisely. It transformed the library from a rich man's charity project into a necessary public utility. But democratizing books isn't just about paying for them. I mean, if these places are public utilities exploding in size, the logistics of locating a single book must have become a total nightmare.
Oh, it was chaos. That logistical nightmare is actually what birthed the Dewey Decimal System in 1876. It grouped knowledge into broad numeric categories, which is, perfect for a local patron just browsing for history.
But what about massive academic research?
Yeah.
Dewey doesn't really scale for that, does it?
No, not at all. For that, they needed the Library of Congress classification. That uses alphanumeric combinations that can expand infinitely. So universities can catalog highly niche subtopics without breaking the entire system's architecture.
Okay, so we've established how Carnegie turned these into organized public utilities. But I want to push back on this idea of the general public during this era.
I see where you're going with this.
Yeah, because by the 1850s, the Boston Public Library had the words "free to all" literally carved into its stone facade. Yet looking at the historical record, it wasn't actually free to everyone.
It absolutely was not. For a huge portion of American history, and particularly during the Jim Crow era, libraries were strictly segregated.
Right.
Black citizens were systematically excluded or, forced into severely underfunded colored branches.
Which sparked resistance way earlier than most people realize. Like in 1939, Samuel Wilbert Tucker organized a sit-in at the Alexandria Library in Virginia. 5 black men were arrested just for requesting library cards.
Yeah, and that is 15 years before the modern civil rights movement even began. They used the library as the literal staging ground for demanding equality.
Which proves libraries are much more than book repositories.
Yep.
They're what sociologist Eric Klinenberg calls social infrastructure.
Exactly. They are shared, neutral spaces that foster community resilience. I mean, Klinenberg looked at the devastating 1995 Chicago heat wave and found something amazing.
Oh, right, the survival rates.
Yeah. Neighborhoods with robust library access had significantly higher survival rates.
Because the library provided a free, air-conditioned space where people naturally gathered. They formed these invisible social networks.
Right. So when the heat wave hit, people didn't just stay home. They checked on the elderly guy they usually saw reading the paper at the library every morning. The physical space created a social safety net.
But that crucial social infrastructure is facing massive modern threats today. And it starts with their invisible plumbing, which is ebooks. I always assumed a library just bought a digital file and kept it forever, just like a paperback.
That would make sense, but no. Looking at our notes, they don't own these ebooks at all. They're essentially just renting temporary licenses.
And the math on those rentals is brutal, isn't it?
It's terrible. Libraries often pay 3 to 5 times the retail price for a single digital copy. And those licenses frequently just vanish. They expire after a set time limit or sometimes after just 26 checkouts.
So they're constantly forced to repurchase their own digital shelves.
Yeah.
That's wild. And then there's the other modern crisis, the culture wars.
Right, the surge in censorship.
Now, just a quick note for you listening. As we unpack this recent record-breaking surge between 2020 and 2025, our goal is just to share what's in the sources. We aren't taking sides here at all. We are strictly neutral and just laying out the two main viewpoints driving this conflict.
Exactly. The sources outline a really fierce divide. Proponents of these book bans advocate strongly for parental rights, arguing it's essential to protect children from sexually explicit or objectionable content.
While on the other side, critics view these bans as systematic attempts to erase LGBTQ+ and minority identities from the public sphere. Both sides basically put librarians right in the crossfire.
The underlying mission of democratizing knowledge remains the same, but the battleground has completely shifted.
Right. So what this all means for you is that your local library isn't just a quiet room to read in. It's fighting a two-front war. You've got cultural battles over what's allowed on the shelves and corporate battles over who actually owns those shelves.
It really makes you rethink what a library is today.
It does. Which brings us back to those early guarded fortress vaults where knowledge was locked away by the elite. As libraries are forced to shift from owning permanent physical books to merely renting temporary digital licenses, what happens to humanity's historical record if a publisher simply decides to delete a controversial title from their servers overnight?